A frantic rhythm beat against her chest, her inhales sharp and strained as pure adrenaline and terror coursed through her. In the silent, cold, and dusty room, the rope beat into her wrists and ankles, securing her to the chair. With her vision gone, a small whimper escaped her as the rough texture of the blindfold touched her skin and the air grew cooler. The sound of approaching footsteps made her heart leap into her throat, her face draining of color as her mind raced with terrifying possibilities. A heavy thud echoed as something struck the floor, followed by the sharp metallic click of a handgun. Her lips trembled as she swallowed, a cold thread washing over her as she accepted her imminent, likely brutal end. A sudden tug on her made her wince, and she squinted her eyes, the bright morning light feeling like an unwelcoming assault, leaving her feeling uneasy. She blinked repeatedly, her eyes struggling to adapt to the dim light. Startled by the sound of footsteps, she lurched in the chair, the rope biting into her wrist with increased pain. Her eyes stayed fixated on the trio of the men in front of her, all sharply dressed in suits. Tears welled in her eyes as the chilling realization dawned. Escape was impossible, and in that moment, hope had vanished. As one of the men looked at her, she could see a complex blend of feelings flickering across his features. Now, no need to be scared, Lydia, spoke the man softly. Lydia's gaze locked onto him, the glint of his red gemstone cuffling, a clear sign of his authority in the room. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she quickly glanced at the two other men by the door. A hot spark of anger and frustration flared within her as she fixated the leader with furious glare. What the hell do you want from me? Hissed Lydia. Her aggressive tone provoked a swift, stinging slap from the man, making her eyes water with discomfort. As she swallowed back unspoken words, a single tear escaped and slid down her cheek, a silent testament to the hot, stinking sensation she tried to ignore. Quiet, woman, snapped the man. He roughly seized her ginger hair, compelling her to meet his gaze. His enjoyment evident in the pain and fear that contorted her features, as though it amplified his domination over her. Let's see if your Xavier will come to save you, to make a deal with me. Hearing his words, she let out a soft chuckle. Her eyes locked onto his. She was acutely aware of her boyfriend's character and his fierce protectiveness, knowing he wouldn't hesitate to confront those who displeased him regarding her. A flicker of amusement in her gaze unsettled the leader, prompting him to shift his stance and cast a furtive look at the guards positioned near the entrance. Lydia gathered every ounce of bravery she possessed and spat at the man, observing his face contorted with revulsion and anger. His hand shot out, ready to hit her once more, but he faltered for a second, a sudden realization making him drop his arm. A chuckle escaped her as she witnessed the reaction. Oh, yeah. The stories you heard about Xavier? Yeah, they are real, and you're fucked now, spoke Lydia with a hint of joy in her voice. As she stared at the man in charge, a chuckle bubbled from her throat. Her eyes gleamed with a hint of apprehension and admiration as she recalled her boyfriend's ruthless nature. A deep inhalation helped her gather her composure, aiming to infuse her coming words with a resolute tone. He will find me, and when he does, you are good as dead. He thoughtfully traced his lips with his fingers, lost in contemplation. He scoffed in annoyance, his eyes flicking to the door where the bodyguards stood rigidly, their attention clearly fixed on the ongoing discussion. The stillness was so intense it felt heavy. I quitted it that gave way to distinct rustle of the footsteps drawing closer. As Lydia's gaze shifted to the door, her heart began to thrum with renewed urgency, recognizing the distinct rhythm of the approaching footsteps. Without warning, a volley of gunshots erupted, their deafening roar ricocheting through the abandoned building expanse. In that moment, the door was violently kicked open, and the weapon swiveled sharply to the side. As the flashes illuminated the room, a heavy thud signaled the body of a dead guard hitting the ground. Lydia's mouth opened in a soundless shriek as she witnessed another individual enter the room, fire several shots at the other man, and swiftly end his life. His eyes widened as he reached for his concealed handgun, but he froze as two weapons leveled at him, daring any action. With agonizing slowness, he raised his hands, the futility of any defense dawning on him as the time slipped away. Lydia watched her boyfriend stride confidently into the room as his footsteps echoed once more down the corridor. A smile bloomed on her face, her eyes alight with joy. A comforting warmth spread through her chest, the nightmare finally over and her safety assured. Xavier! chirped Lydia. Her gaze was drawn to the tall man, the white of his long sleeved shirt, a striking detail under the dark vest. His gaze intensified as he saw her tied to the chair, and he rushed forward, the soft click of his knife being drawn from his pocket, a stark contrast to the dim light reflecting off its blade. With a decisive slice, he cut the rope holding her captive, his ears filled with the sharp, pain cries as his men struck the person they held accountable for Lydia's vanishing. You came for me? Always, spoke Xavier softly. Observing the raw tracks on her wrist, he pursed his lips and darted a look at his men, restraining the bloodied, wheezing man, whose body throbbed with pain. A barely perceptible nod from him was the signal for his warriors to overpower his enemy and force him into submission. Lydia turned her head and discreetly looked at her boyfriend, observing the way the shadows sculpted his cheekbones and lent an air of intrigue to his blue eyes. A flutter in her chest accompanied the delicate pressure of his fingers on her skin, a soothing massage to her wrists offering much needed relief. As she gazed at her, a tender smile graced her face, his eyes reflecting a profound love and tenderness that melted away the protective barriers she had constructed over years of painful experiences. Xavier's arm circled her waist, a reassuring weight as he helped her rise from the chair, his touch conveying a sense of safety. The comforting scent of his bergamot and earthy cedar cologne filled her senses, drawing her closer to him as she tried to block out whimpers of the man who had taken her from her home. With a swift motion, Xavier drew the handgun from his shoulder holster, leveling it at his foe who was on his knees. You took my woman from her place. You dare to hurt her, spoke Xavier coldly. He saw the man's eyes drop, desperately trying to concentrate on the blood slicked floor, while the other two men held him down, still pressing him to kneel. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic trumpet of dread as the inevitable unfolded, regret a bitter tide washing over him for dismissing the cautionary tales, his own arrogance and self-inflicted wound. Now you regret, huh? Teased Lydia. As Xavier's hand gently traced the curve of her waist, she felt the unspoken message of his love and comfort in his touch. She looked at him then, her gaze meeting his, and saw his eyes were locked on her face, tracking the angry bruise The man's slap had already begun to raise. A tender warmth filled his gaze as he looked at her, but it was swiftly chilled in an icy disdain when his eyes fell upon his foe. He is lucky that I didn't kill him right away, hissed Xavier. With a decisive touch, Lydia's palm closed around the handgun her boyfriend held, her gentle yet firm grip easing it from his hand as she leveled it towards the man who struck her. With a fearful grasp, he raised his head, his eyes widening as his lips began to shake. If you think that stories about my Xavier being ruthless are exaggerated, and you don't know the truth, spoke Lydia with coldness in her voice as she had her finger close to the trigger. A subtle grin spread across her face, a response to comforting weight of her boyfriend's hand on her waist. They make him a monster in them, but I am the one everyone should fear. Her finger tightened on the trigger, and as she fired without a moment's pause, a deafening bang reverberated through the room, immediately succeeded by a heavy thud. Her gaze remained fixed on the deceased, the damage to its head allowing the blood to seep out, forming a spreading pool of crimson on the floor. She lowered the handgun, her eyes meeting her boyfriend's, a look of rough desire burning his gaze. A light caress of his fingers on her cheek, and a teasing pull of her lower lip, conveying his flirtatious intent. Mm-hmm. Let's get you cleaned up, love, and then you can get wherever you want, spoke Xavier softly. He slowly drew nearer, his arms encircling her. Their kiss deepened and lingered. After a short while, his nose touched her ear, his warm breath sending a ticklish sensation across her skin. All I want is you, whispered Lydia.